It's August 10th, 2023. This tape is copyright James McRyland Curry, a victim of British and NASA sonar that sees into the psyche and can project voices. I've been tortured and taken as an occupied symbol of the United States. A surrogate presidency by the Jeffrey Corporation, who was dislodged in adjunct to the Kennedy assassinations by the Bush clan, who uploaded Jeffrey with the help of Clinton to produce Boris Obama. This tape is an extraordinary recording. It's similar to samizdat. Samizdat was a movement in occupied Czechoslovakia. The Russians had ruined Eastern Europe through the gesture of occupation. And their names were similarly self-abrogated. And Václav Havel was a missionary who took up with Bushy tune, much the disasters upon us because Bush was able to pull off the Kennedy assassinations. And samizdat was a way of playwright and parliamentarian would see it was legal to write. Nobody could stop you from writing. You couldn't be arrested for buying a pen and paper. But if it changed hands, if you communicated it to someone else and sent to someone else, then you could be arrested, put in prison. Sometimes Jan Patochka was evidently an old man who died in prison. And which is very tragic. And it's a tragedy that has ramifications for Russian history that they are unlikely ever to escape. Most of us had hoped that Havel had succeeded in bringing about an honest reform movement in Russia, but that was just self-deception. And it's self-deception to say that this is part of the Velvet Revolution. This tape isn't itself. It's similar to samizdat, but the people in academics who supported the samizdat movement and the representations of the Prague Spring intellectuals like Ivan Svitek, Jan Patochka, Václav Havel. There are quite a few of them. Elena Serna, the Olga Havel Foundation in Czechoslovakia. And the people who supported that academically in major newspapers and major universities. I mean, we've all seen in recent years our schools get trashed. It's sad for everybody. You know, the young people have suffered inordinately over the last recent history. And we're being wrecker-balled into climate change. But although the academic world who affirmed the Václav Havel's Velvet Revolution seemed to be on the level, they were the ones who were sneaky enough to pull off the hybrid war of the AIDS attack and cover for it. In other words, the people who were in the Velvet Revolution. If you study the 60s, okay, they were talking about the 80s, which is an outgrowth of liberalism. The Velvet Revolution is an outgrowth of Eastern Europe liberalism. But if you talk about the 60s, you don't know anything unless you know that Hair was a setup. The Broadway musical Hair was an explosive setup for a Venus flytrap operation known as AIDS. It was a setup. That's what it was. The people who were involved in it processed the AIDS attack for the Central Intelligence Agency. But the people who formed the Velvet Revolution were in that satrapy. And they were in bed with the Russians. That was one of the reasons why the Russians said, oh, we can reform. You're getting rid of the queers. So the blacks were like, give us a black president, you know, and a hybrid war game that affirms the black man's power-mad premises. And I'll get back to that in a minute, because the alpinist scam was a scam. But it was also a hybrid war statement by a soldier of fortune network surrounding John Lennon. John Lennon was a very sophisticated soldier of fortune who didn't really die. He pulled a Houdini that was set in motion from the days of Gabriel D'Annunzio in Fayum, a counterfeiting operation at the birth of the great dictators and Hollywood cinema. Always was in the pocket of the Axis. D.W. Griffith was inspired by D'Annunzio. They had been planning with Ouspensky and Reagan the Houdini operation, the Houdini job of Lenin, from back in the 20s. And they pulled it off. They didn't leave it to one addled rock star to decide to go out on the necessary night. He was in the loop. Well, the people who were pulling this at Carnegie Mellon University, that's where they pulled the alpinist scam, which the telltale, the reason you know it's hybrid is because the telltale clip in Alias Little Boy Channel mirrors the action in the same way that The Killers by Reagan mirrors the action in Dealey Plaza. It's a parallel universe between cinema and reality. The snuff film guild. So, but if you look and take a census of the people and academics in America who loved Václav Havel and loved Aung San Suu Kyi and loved the Velvet Revolution and samizdat, they also loved the film Diva. And Diva was part of the projection contraption of the hybrid station. It was an adjunct describing the network behind the alpinist scam. Now, if you find senior black ethics people in sociology and military sociology, black psychology and stuff, someone like me says, I may not agree with you, but I will fight to the death to protect your right to say what you do. That's basic. They will not return the favor. Some of them will, but a lot of them won't. A lot of them see you as an expendable weight. And the reason we have laws, Gerald Horne, is to protect your right to publish your manuscripts. And that's been hard won. You're throwing away a hard-won right that you have. You don't have the right. I should be able to sue you for what you pulled with me. And I legally have that right. I probably don't have that power. But you're throwing away the instances of successful remediation when you support something like the foolish overthrow statement made by hillbillies in Niger. Let me give you an example that compares that. I've already compared it to what America did in Ukraine because it compares that. We have to stop that. America has to fight that. People have to be willing to stop, to put their voices out where it can be heard saying, we demand that the United States be held answerable for those. Just like then, it applies to the same thing in Niger. You know, when you have a voice from Africa saying everything in the West belongs to Africans, or you have, it's the same thing when you hear a ghost from Treblinka. The survivors stole everything from the Jews. we have laws to prevent these things from happening. We have to stick together in mastering legal systems so that rights and duties are protected and laws are enforced. Take Reconstruction of the South. During the Reconstruction, blacks were elected to office, and then they began to be assassinated and intimidated by a resurgent Klan. That's what I have been trying to do something about. The people in black, the NAACP, have allied themselves with Trumpy Tune, Bushy Tune, Obama, Clinton, and the makers of Diva, the symbolic victory crowd. They come from the mentality of Schadenfreude that your kind wins, you cheer. And more cooperative economics, which is the reason why we need a responsible government attending human affairs, is to keep game theory in its place. Yes, we can play baseball, but that doesn't mean we go out and cheer renegade assassins, you see. And people like me have been trying to do something about Access Hollywood, which is one of the ways that the Reconstruction was sabotaged, was through people like D.W. Griffith and D'Annunzio. But when they shot black elected leaders, what happened is that they set back progress. Now you get these wise owls who say that Nigerian black people who've worked hard for their democracy in their schools and their protective progress in climate sustainability and have every reason to be proud of their achievements are, I think the word they used was sock puppets. It means honorary the white men, because the man who was deposed in Nigeria is an Arab. This is sick in the mind. When the way to heal Reconstruction was to re-elect Pinchback, was to elect black people and get them situated as part of the foundation of modern progress and modern education. Modernism is about electing people and respecting due process in democratic government. It's not possible to both sustain antipathy for modernism and complain about the Maidan coup d'etat, because what Newland and her chums did was a violation of modernism. And that's what was wrong with what they did. So what you see is a bunch of mountebanks from the 80s. I'll give you, the Karkagri, which I have difficulty dignifying Yoko Ono. Ringo Starr, I can say his name, but he's a scumbag. Him and Oliver Stone and Putin and these guys, these lizard people, came with this idea that, right is left, war is peace, hate is love, and Reagan and Lenin were as one. And when they pretended to find these letters that they wrote, where Lenin pulled a Houdini and Reagan pretended to be shot, he comes out and waves to me. They said, "No, Jim, they're the good guys. Queen Elizabeth likes them. Liz trusts both of them. They are the good guys, and you are the moral imposter because your only role is to die of AIDS. So get to the island where the girl has the death tattoo, and we'll discuss what they call +1, -1. You get these guys who really did rape somebody. They go to court, and people are tired of rape stories. They say, just get out of here. These people, I did nothing wrong, and they have me over a catastrophic wheel, a furnace of evil that they had invented, a pit of yammering. That's where Yusuendor comes from. For the Karkagri, because the Japanese used to dangle. They create dung and hates. And dangle Christians, people who were ethical, who believed in the ethics of virtue rather than 1514 AD's Machiavellianism. They dangled them over the pit of yammering until they committed apostasy. And this is what Yu Andor was doing for the croquet reducer who had implanted a nerve agent. You can see it. Torments of horrors. And Penis Gabriel sold this idea to the press, who said, love slaves, licky boot. They licked the boot of Reagan, or loved slaves of John Lennon. Ringo Starr says what to do. He's the boss. And they say, we found this script in Queerballs framing Reagan, and we want to give him AIDS, but we have to prove rapid eye movement is defiant trust, a memory of defiant trespass. And they were plus oneing things. And created a war game. And they called me schizophrenic while they did this. It was a hybrid play station for the Bush murderer, for the Bushy Tunes, maniacs. And they did this instead of common sense about ecology. Reagan sent me his list of priorities. Ecology was the bottom. He said, I believe in ecology so long as everybody gets a piece of the expanding pie. And they made up these stupid, grossly ridiculous stories and destroyed the country over them. About weapons of mass destruction. Talk about schizophrenics. They were doing like this here. Weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. Bushy Tune had the whole society behaving like chewing the carpet. And they destroyed the country. Nice of them. Wasn't that nice of them? And when they came back to reestablish their credibility, they said it was time to make Ukraine part of NATO. I mean, that's a pretty serious abrogation of common sense when you're dealing with a society that was plundered and nearly subjected to extermination by Nazism through the gates of the Ukraine. These evil fascist people like Mick Jagger talk about having sympathy for the devil. They don't have an iota of sympathy for Russia when it's due.